I'll not try to do an introduction. Just want to naturally get our way into the topics that I want to cover. So
Okay.
now we're starting the conversation. All right, not just to
Okay,
get
sounds
you
good.
into the right mindset. And so, Ash, like I said, massive pleasure for you to do this real quick. Fresh off the end of the VCT season and looking ahead towards what you are going to do next. And so that's it. What have you been kind of doing? What's been the game plan for yourself in recent days?
In recent days. Well, first off, thank you for reaching out for the interview. I really appreciate hearing from you and getting the opportunity to chat with you in this setting. And as far as what's been up with me, I had a couple of like local events in Toronto that were going on that I got the opportunity to do. So seeing some of like our more like local talent and a couple of like known players as well. I think was it Fluorescent and Effie's competed in one of the events that I had done there as well. And then some faces across like the tier three, tier two scene that are recognizable there. I think Mata also competed in one, if not both of the events. But yeah, it's been very chill this off season so far. I do have some things cooking up that I can't really quite talk about quite yet. But I'm looking forward to when those do end up being announced. So you haven't seen the last of it yet for 2024. Thankfully, I feel very fortunate that I was able to get some opportunities into the off season. But otherwise, it's been spending a lot of time with family and kind of just trying to take the opportunity to brush up on some of my skills and elevate them going forward as well. And being able to do it from like a more relaxing environment, that being like at home as opposed to like the stress of like travel and everything like that. I'm looking forward to continuous growth, I think, throughout this off season, especially to show what I've got going into 2025.
Yeah, for sure. It's been definitely one of, I would say, a pretty well-deserved off-season, well-deserved break for yourself. Given your short trajectory. I would say short because given you've been at this for around half a handful of years, less than a handful of years. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong. But still, just coming off of covering VCT Ascension because that was around the time in which I sent the request for a quick conversation. How has it been just kind of going through that event and then having to reset, and in addition to that, just comparing that to how it was, in prior years, because in prior years you were kind of in the hunt of just being in the position where you're currently in right now, just having to cover the major ride events, such as Ascension, such as um, VCT Tier One. So how has that kind of um, uh, difference been like for you in addition to just working Ascension?
It's been a very big transition, I would say, because you're on the money on as far as like how long I've been doing this. It's only been a couple of years. I was lucky enough to kind of just throw myself into casting and talent work full time right out of the gate. I kind of got my first few paid gigs and then I took a risk to see if I could continue to keep the ball rolling, and it managed to work out for me. It was a grind over the past couple of years. This is being my, I guess, technically third year of doing this for work, and hitting the level of doing VCT EMEA and doing Ascension for the second year in a row here as well is a very big honor. I didn't think that I would get this far in my career so early on, to be honest. Because you hear, I feel like, from a lot of casters, and whether it's casters, analysts, any talent, it's usually like, okay, you're grinding for a long time until you get your big break. And I think the pieces all fell together very nicely for me. Definitely a lot of luck as far as like timing with certain opportunities. Um, but it's been a really big adjustment. I definitely have felt pressure on my shoulders as far as being able to perform and elevate myself to a certain standard and a certain level. And I think I have a lot to learn still, but it's been a really nice transition because I was fortunate enough to have like an amazing fellow talent team within the EMEA ecosystem, and they were incredibly supportive during the entire time that I was making my transition into VCT EMEA and being willing to teach me and help me. So in that regard, it was smooth, but it was also a rough transition because it's like a huge jump in what I was used to doing beforehand and the skill level that I was expected to be able to bring to the table there as well.
I know there was a little bit of a quick joke around the time in which the talent list was announced for each of the four major regions, and since you and along with Steel was like the few people from outside of EMEA, you were kind of
Mhm.
getting into just kind of saying, "Oh, I'm a trader for Americas, and I'm gonna go for all the EMEA." But still, just having to go from working exclusively um, in Canada and within North America. I believe you also traveled down here in the US to cover a few events.
Mhm.
How has that kind of difference been like, or more so, just kind of culture shock or shock at all, just having to go from one region to
Ooh.
another?
Um, I think there was definitely a culture shock as far as being from Canada and then going to Berlin for long periods of time and like the difference in how people are there like on a day-to-day basis. I didn't have any negative experiences while I was there, but the way that people carry themselves and the way that they will interact with you is very different from what I'm used to in Canada. Um, I think just Berliners are definitely very stoic in a
Hmm.
way. Meanwhile, I would say in Canada we tend to be a bit more like um open to conversation and whatnot. Meanwhile, sometimes you'll head into a store in Germany and they're there to do their job, they're not there to
Hmm.
chat with you. And I like that personally because I like to just, I'm there to get something done. But I would say the hardest part was actually less of like a cultural difference and two things. So one funny thing is I'm lactose intolerant. And I know what I can handle, like as far as dairy products in my own country. When it comes to Europe, all the distributors for products and like what goes into making products is very, very, very different, right? So I had a couple tummy troubles while I was over there, trying out foods that I thought would be okay, and it didn't turn out to be okay just because my body wasn't used to it. And then the second thing I would say was I think the hardest part was the time zone difference. Because traveling within NA and everything like that was like perfectly fine. That was pretty easy. Stressful at times for sure, because I think traveling in general can be stressful, as much of a privilege that it is as well. But when it came to being in Europe, that's like a massive time difference from most of the people that I hold very close to my heart. And so it was difficult not being able to communicate with them at the times that I would typically be communicating with them. And having that difference in time zone was, I think, probably the hardest adjustment for me, just feeling very detached from my main social circles.
It kind of felt like you were also alone in a sense, right? Because sure, you got your usual coworkers, helping you along the way, guide your
Mhm.
way through a new environment such as VCT EMEA. But still, it. I can assume there were also moments in which you felt like you were by yourself, right?
Yeah, I definitely had times where I felt very alone, I would say, because although I would consider my coworkers also my friends at this point, and I would hope that they consider me the same way, I it's also just like a very new friendship there too, compared to the people that you're normally close with. It's a different dynamic. And it takes a long time to like build up that level of closeness with your colleagues as well. And I think that, like you were saying, it's although you have those people, it's not quite the same. And I definitely felt that, especially as each trip kind of got longer, because for kickoff, I was only there for about like a week or so, I want to say. And then for the first stage, it was a couple of weeks. And then for the second split, I was there like nearly the entirety of the season. Um, so it was like a slow burn of
Hmm.
working up to like the duration and adjusting to that. But it was definitely peaks and valleys of when it would hit you. It comes in waves for sure.
Well, a little bit of a side topic. Were you able to learn a little bit of German because of the a few topics that you mentioned? You know, having to decipher or figure out which were the right dairy labels or marks are the were the right ones that you could have.
Yeah, I did learn a little bit. I don't know how much I can say I've necessarily retained since I have not been
Mm.
using it, or practicing it afterwards. But I definitely got used to learning some words just like through translating them and everything like that. And I did put a little bit of effort into Duolingo at a certain point, but I found it really hard to keep up with it with everything else going on. If I do get the opportunity to go back next year, though, I definitely plan on learning more just to make my life and the Berliners' lives a little bit easier when I try to communicate with them.
Well, give me some words that you do know. You know, just kind of give you a quick pop quiz, if I may ask.
Oh no, not the pop quiz. Okay. Now that you've asked me, it's like everything has gone completely out the window right now in my brain. Well, I feel like it's so basic to say like all of like the simple ones, right? Like you've
I mean,
got
it's
yes
still
and
good.
no, which is ja and nein, and then you have bitte, which is please, and then you've also got Dankeschön, which is thank you, and then you have tschüss, which is goodbye. Um, and then there's other ones. I know the word for almonds, but it's
Mm.
completely escaped me right now because I'd always have to order almond milk. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I'm better with actually seeing the words rather than I'm very visual in that kind of sense. So when I get asked to like just pull something out of my brain sometimes, it just completely gets lost on me. So very basic knowledge of German.
I can say that I know a little bit of words, so a little bit of foods like schnitzel or Oktoberfest or any. If you ask me to name any of the German football clubs in that compete in the country, I'll give you like five of them off the bat. But yeah,
Oh.
pretty interesting to know your current German level, and so you kind of going a little bit back onto your stay in Berlin. Just sort of a topic that you talked about with me before we started the actual recording was just having to deal with your schedule and just when I say schedule, it's just as you said, you went to each of the three different stages of the season um, and stayed there not the entire way through. You know, from kickoff all
Mhm.
the way to the end of stage two. You stayed in kickoff, left after kickoff, came back to the studio. Stage one, left at the end of stage one, came back in stage two, left end of stage two. So, how difficult was it for you to just have to go through that process, you know, time and time again, and having to reaccommodate yourself in the studio, and how that might have affected, you know, just your physical slash mental state.
That's a really good question. I always have not necessarily difficulty, I guess a little bit of difficulty answering this question just because I feel like I don't want to give anyone the wrong idea that I'm not appreciative of this opportunity and that I believe it is a massive privilege. But I feel like other talent have also talked about the toll that having to travel and live in hotels does end up taking on you over time. As much of, again, it is a massive privilege to be able to do that. But there are sides of it that I don't think that everyone is always able to recognize, and that's like the toll that it can take on your social life, your relationships, and everything like that. Like I have two cats of my own, and I was lucky enough that I previously had a partner beforehand who was willing to like help me take care of them while I was gone. But if I didn't have that, I would have had to have like hired somebody or found like family or friends who were willing to pet sit them. Um, the second split, I had the opportunity to move back home, and then my family was willing to take care of my cats while I was gone. So that's a lot of pressure that was alleviated off of my shoulders. But it's always kind of stressful, I think, having to leave your pets behind when you are traveling for work. And then I think also It's a really big adjustment because you have to, for me at least, it's a 6 hour time difference that I have to adjust to. So I have to fix my entire sleep schedule and then get reacclimated to being there because I tend to have I have a couple health issues and everything like that. That's always a bit of a physical adjustment for me too. And it makes it really difficult to also kind of stay within a set routine as well, which I think is super important for myself as far as my habits go. When I'm not in a routine, I feel like all of my healthy habits just they're out the door. Like I'm just not the best at keeping up to date with them. Um, so when I have to do all of that traveling and that gets disrupted, it makes it hard to build out like a workout routine and habitually be able to do that at the same time, like every single day. And I don't think people realize also how long our work days are at the studio as well. Like we're arriving there around, it depends on, I want to say you can arrive there at like 1 to 2 p.m. ish, and then you're potentially leaving at 1 a.m. if the games go to like all three maps. They're super long OT, and then you have tech pauses and everything like that. Sometimes we get lucky, we get to leave at 10 p.m. There's a lot of variation, so you don't really know when your workday is ever really gonna end. But yeah, I feel like there's also just like so much more like as far as it really depends on what hotel you get put in. You can get lucky, you can get unlucky. Sometimes you don't have the best like neighbor, they keep you up at night. There's a lot of different factors. But again, I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it definitely can also take a toll on just like your mental health or even how you feel like you're performing at work sometimes. Um, yeah, it usually takes me a good like week, I want to say, when I get there to adjust properly and to kind of reset myself when and like be feeling like myself again as well when I'm in Berlin. Oh, there was a day that I think that we did have like a 1 a.m., 1:30 a.m. end day. I'm pretty sure. I think that was probably one of the longest days that we had. Because you never want to, you never want to be ending the day into the next day. You know? Like, that's past midnight. I feel like midnight is like, okay, everyone's exhausted, but like, still, it's like, it's fine. But we've had a 1 a.m. day. And what people don't realize is we also do our story meets after the broadcast is done, too. So it's like, okay, the broadcast is done. Everyone who's watching on Twitch, YouTube, whatever it is, they're like, okay, cool. Their work is done for the day. Nope, we might have a meeting afterwards where we stay for like another like 30 minutes or something like that. And then having to like commute home as well because the studio is like further out on the outskirts of Berlin and everything. So it all does end up adding up, and then you have to consider the fact that you're like, okay, you have to now go to bed and reset going into the next day and everything like that too. I think this is, I think stage two had one of our longest days that we had. Yeah, I think it was during the second split. I can remember the day in itself, but I can't remember what matches were actually going on that day. I think what made it difficult as well is because the schedule for Split 2 got moved back 1 hour. So the games were running an hour later than the previous split. Um, so everyone was just like super tired because the nights were just already automatically an hour longer. And then if the day goes longer, then it feels even longer because it depends on what time you even wake up in the morning, if you're someone who's able to sleep in or not too. The feeling, I would say, yeah, I think that there was definitely a point where the exhaustion was hitting me and I was like, okay, just let's just get through one day at a time. Let's just go one day at a time. We got this. This is gonna be fine. But it was at the point where it was like, okay, you can definitely feel yourself reaching a limit, and it's all about kind of realizing, okay, how am I able to keep my stamina going? So I understand where you're coming from with that for sure. I think most talent, if not all talent, could definitely agree that there are times where it does hit you like a wall in a way. I want to say I think the person that I directly asked advice for the most was Tom Biz. He was very, very supportive, and I part of the reason why I also reached out to him so much was although him and Mitch have more of like a hybrid style going on, he leans more into that color caster category. So I viewed him as both like a mentor and a friend, and I know that with Tom, like he'll tell me how it is, you know? I can trust him to tell me the truth. I can trust everyone on that talent team to just like tell me the truth straight up. But it felt very easy to talk to him about things because I think that him and I also had to have different perspectives sometimes. And I really valued the perspective that he would bring to the table, and how that would like open my eyes in certain situations. And just like the advice that he would give, whether it was more like on like the mental side of being talent or the actual like mechanical side, slash skill side, I valued his thoughts on that overall. And I would say that Kakuka Bea, she was a very, very big support on like the mental and emotional side of things for me, especially because I worked with her and Yansu so closely for the analyst desk in particular. So when I was feeling a lot of my like imposter syndrome, I think Kukuka helped me out a lot there at certain points as far as just like being able to be supportive and everything like that as well. I casted with Lauren, I think once maybe. Yeah, once during kickoff, I'm pretty sure. It was early on in the season. It was either kickoff or it was the first split that I casted with Lauren, yeah. I think it was a week where Steele wasn't able to be there. He wasn't there for that particular week, so I kind of filled in at that point. Lauren is so good at her job that it makes it feel easy. And I'm saying this off the fact that I know that one of the casts that I did do with her this year, unfortunately, she wasn't feeling her best. I believe she had to call in sick like the next day. But the fact that she wasn't even feeling her best and it still felt so easy to just be able to like cast with her, I feel like says a lot about her skill. So I always felt like it was a massive honor to be able to work with her in a cast. And definitely a lot of nerves too, because you're like, oh shit, I'm casting with Lauren Pansy Scott right now. And you definitely feel that pressure of like, she is one of the greats. I am not one of the greats, and that's okay. But now I feel like, okay, I gotta really, I mean, I always want to step up my game, but when you get to cast with like one of those casters that everybody knows and everybody loves, um, it's like a different kind of weight that's on your shoulders. But she always makes it very easy, I think, for whoever she's casting with because she's so good at her job. And it's always a lot of fun when I do get the opportunity to work with her and learn from her in her work as well. It gets you pretty bad sometimes, to be honest. I think especially while I was in Berlin as well, I think part of it being I felt like it was such a big jump from what I had done before and then just getting the shot to work on VCT EMEA the entirety of this year. Um, I am very aware that I have a lot to learn, and I think that just like jumping to this level, because I didn't even really do challengers at all last year. I did have the opportunity to work Ascension remote last year. But going from doing mainly remote broadcasts and getting the opportunity to do like in studio or a LAN event like every once in a while is completely different from going from one-offs of those into like a full like this is an entire league for the year, and the amount of work that goes into that is also very, very different as far as the amount of moving pieces that you kind of have to be aware of and the different teams that you're working with and collaborating with as well. Because most of other like productions, if we're going to be honest, they don't have that kind of support where you're going to be able to like request X amount of things, and be able to do like skits for a broadcast, because it's just not possible if you're not doing it for a season in a studio, realistically, right? And so getting used to that was difficult. And I think just me being aware of what my journey has been like, and the fact that I had only been doing this for a couple of years, and I've started out in Valorant as well. Um, I definitely felt at certain points that I wasn't where I should be or where I wanted to be. And I'm still not where I want to be, because ideally, I hope that there's no talent out there that ever goes like, yeah, I'm exactly where I want to be right now and I don't want to grow anymore. Because you should always be striving to grow. But I had moments where I was like, am I meant to be on this stage yet? However, I always did my best to turn that kind of energy into more of a hunger to improve and to prove the fact that I do belong to be here, and to continue to show that I am working on myself, even though I know where a lot of my faults lie. I'm not content leaving them that way. Yeah, it definitely did. Because I know how the community can feel about certain decisions that are made regarding talent as well. So I myself, I personally do not go and watch and read Twitch chat or like YouTube chat or anything like that. Like, I am very fragile. I'm very fragile. Yeah. Um, yeah, my feelings get hurt easily, so I know that I can't handle doing that. Some people can, and they can take the heat and whatever. I cannot do that. Um, so I'm just like very hyper aware of the fact that the Valorant community can also be very critical of the talent who are chosen and their expectations from them. I know that they're also capable of changing their mind though, so that's why I kind of just didn't put too much stock into it. And I'm just kind of go with the idea of like, I'll either change their mind if they think I don't deserve to be there, or even if I don't change their mind, not everyone is everybody's cup of tea either. Because I think that, everyone has their favorites as far as talent goes, and you're not going to be everybody's favorite. You might not even, they might hate you, and that's okay. That's kind of, you have to learn to roll with it when you're talent as well. So that's been like a big lesson, because it's the biggest platform that I've really ever been given to work on. So adjusting to that was a big part of me growing a bit of a thicker skin there too, I think. But yeah, I think it's pretty difficult to try to get over that mental hurdle though. And I think that for any talent out there who might be watching this, once you're able to do that, I think that takes a lot of weight off your shoulders, and it allows you to perform more as yourself than maybe you were before. Um, ooh, I think just getting into a different mindset, especially comparing like analyst desk to casting, especially because the EMEA analyst desk is very short. So I think the America's desk was usually around like 30 minutes in length, at least for the pre-show, and then it was 15 minutes for EMEA. And that's half the amount of time that America's had, right? And it did allow us to have a faster show, in a way, and there were pros and cons of it for sure. But I think the hardest transition is going from casting, where you're talking with your co-caster over like the entirety of a game. You just get to yap back and forth. But when you're on the analyst desk and it's only 15 minutes, or like I think it's like maybe 10 minutes max for between maps. I don't even think it's 10 minutes for EMEA. Um, you have to be way more conscientious of what you're going to say on the desk. And as much as you prepare your notes, as much as you have that written down, memorized, and everything like that, I think that sometimes people forget that you're still like ad-libbing at the end of the day, and just pulling out whatever you decide to pull out in that moment and decide to present as like the most important thing that you could possibly be saying alongside this graphic, or if you have to fill time, like whatever it is. Yes, there is generally a preconceived idea of this is what we want to talk about during this segment, and you have that conversation with your desk mates. However, when it comes down to what you actually get to say on camera, there are so many factors that can change the I want to say like path isn't quite the right word that I'm looking for right now, but I change the direction of how the desk is moving in that moment, whether it's because we have to buy time, an asset's not ready, and you still only have like a finite amount of time to say all of these things. It's so hard to pick out the most important thing and the most valuable thing in that moment. So I think swapping between those two mindsets from analyst desk to casting is the hardest one, because in casting, sometimes you get the opportunity to like fit in whatever you want to say at any point in time as long as it suits the narrative and the storyline and you have more time to work with. Meanwhile, on the analyst desk, it's so snappy and it's so quick that there are so many times, Pedro, that I was just like, why did I just say that? I had a way better point, and then I either cut it short because I was worried that we were running out of time, or I started going off about something that was not actually that important before I actually said my point that I really wanted to make, and I didn't have time to say it. And there's just, it's a very big difference, I guess, in the way you kind of have to think and approach what you're looking to say in those moments comparatively. I think that I will always feel those little regrets of, oh, I should have done this way, or oh, like shoot, I didn't do it the way that I wanted to, um, or oh, this could have been so much better. I think that that feeling is something that is inescapable for me personally. Um, but when I look back at my growth from kickoff to the second split, I think that I it's undeniable to myself that I feel like have grown since then, and me compared to kickoff into the second split, I feel like I got more comfortable and adjusted to the work that I was doing and the whole process of everything. I think that I know that I'm still not satisfied with the work that I put out at the end. However, I am proud of the fact that I was able to show a semblance of growth throughout the season, at least in my eyes. I don't know, other people might not necessarily agree, and that's okay. But it's no excuse. I was dealing with a lot of personal things, I would say, this entire year that made things very difficult, especially right before the second split where I was hoping to show the most possible growth. But to me, I'm not looking to hold that as an excuse. I'm still taking accountability for the fact that like I have very big plans to continue to improve going forward. And while I've adjusted to the workflow, I'm looking forward to kind of leveling up my personal, like professional skills to kind of meet, I think, the comfort that I feel now working in that environment. Um, Yeah, I think it was the hardest year for me overall, to be honest. Because beforehand, I know I mentioned that I kind of went full time into casting right when I started. That was off the back of 2021. So like 2022, early 2022 is when I started casting full time. And I almost want to say, like, although it was hard because it's very grindy at that point where I was kind of picking up every single little gig and I was working most days of the week because I was just doing like smaller broadcasts here and there and my rate wasn't what it is now and everything like that. So I had to kind of add things up over time. Um, the level of work and the expectations were different. I put my all into those broadcasts. However, doing a smaller broadcast that's not on the same level of like an actual Riot product is very different as far as what they expect you to be putting out there. And also the support where like you can actually ask for things to be put on the broadcast there as well. Um, so I think it was the hardest year, although it was my most honored and privileged year just because of the transition, like that massive jump in your expectations and what you need to be putting out there as far as the product goes and everything like that is like a massive jump compared to what I was used to working on beforehand. Yeah, 100%. Because it is laissez-faire, but it is also just like very loose as well, as far as the expectations go, as far as, what they want you putting out there. Just the general, like, overall quality of the broadcasts that I was doing before is just not the same level. And that's like no shade. It just comes down to budget, production value, what the expectations are, and what kind of product that you want to be putting out there. And nothing is going to ever be, as high as, these S tier slash A tier events. Because I think, yeah, it's S tier is for international. So A tier events, comparing that to like a C tier or even like a D tier level when I was like first starting out, which is very grassroots, very community. You can't have the same expectations of work. And it's also where casters are looking to develop themselves and to grow. Like I was not good. I was not good back then. And that's okay because I grew and I developed my skills, but I also needed those platforms on which to do it. And again, just the expectations levels are like completely different. The stakes are completely different there as well, which I think the stakes ultimately is what sets the tone for everything as far as, what budget you're going to have and everything like that. And what you want your broadcast to look like.
What was it just was it just you basically telling yourself, okay, I gotta get some as much experience as I can, and let's go from there, or was it or were you taking it at a much more intricate approach when it comes to building yourself
Mm.
up in those early days?
I want to say it was a mix of both. So I think in the early days, it's definitely just okay, get some experience, get used to being on camera, and just get some reps in. So you kind of get more comfortable. You're learning as you go and everything like that. And then I was very fortunate, I think, that the fact that my casting journey realistically truly kicked off with the Game Changers training camp that happened in LA, October of 2021. And that's where I met Vansili. And he has been a fantastic mentor for me throughout to the last several years. And I've learned so much from him. And in my early days, he gave me a couple of pieces of advice. And I want to say that those particular pieces of advice, mainly being my camera presence was not good back then. I did not know how to work the camera. And I also was I want to say I'm very chill personality wise by nature. And when I talk, typically, I can maybe sound a little bit too chill sometimes. And that came out in my casts in the early days. Like I was way too relaxed and I wasn't building up the energy and flowing the way that I should be as a caster. So those are the two main points that I think that I look towards as far as a more intricate way to evaluate myself and improve was definitely my on-camera presence and my kind of cadence and tone when I was speaking on a cast.
Yeah, for sure. There's that Canadian connection between yourself and Vansili.
Yeah,
Vansili,
there is.
shout out to Vansili, friend of the channel. Someone that I interviewed back in stage two playoffs. But yeah, and also in addition to that, did you also kind of, or more so, just want to? My head is kind of going through many things, but you mentioned a little bit about the training program, and it's one that I kind of touched upon with another person that attended that program, them being Dryad, back then in an interview I did for Blix GG a few years ago, and she gave her own experiences to how much of an effect that gave to just her development from that point onwards, and at that point it was yourself, Dryad, Mimi, I believe, and then other people that are also trying to make a name for themselves within this industry. But it's clear that a good number of you guys stood out in due time, and so just I'd like you to walk me through that process of just attending that program. What were some of the things that people like Van City was teaching you, and what do you think was the biggest impression that you had from that time?
Oh, biggest impression I've had from that time is a really big question. I'm gonna mull over that while I kind of try and answer some of the other things that you're asking. As far as my experience with that training camp goes, to be honest, I don't think I would be where I am right now if I hadn't had that opportunity. I think that when that opportunity really made my career for me in a way, and I have to shout out a friend of mine who his name is Hobbs. He sent me the application actually way back when. I didn't even know that it was a thing that was coming out at that time. So the only reason I applied was because he sent me that application. And I feel like that opportunity really shaped a lot of how I developed as a caster because if I didn't have that chance to go to that training camp and meet the people that I know now, two of the other girls who were there, Gompers and Sierra, they're very close friends of mine and we actually chat all the time. Um, After meeting at that camp, and Gompers was my original duo that I tried to grow with way back when in like the first year that I went full-time casting. And then without meeting Vans through that opportunity, I think that I don't know if I would have gotten where I am as fast. I think that over time, I think I could become the caster that I am today, but I don't think that it would have been over the past couple of years. I think it may have taken me a little bit longer, depending on the connections that I made on my own. And yeah, I think that that opportunity to really have that early mentorship was what very much so like kickstarted my ability to make the changes that I needed to make to my skills and to what I was bringing to the table professionally. And as far as what they taught us everything. Like
Hmm.
there were some parts that were definitely a little bit more like basic because they did pick aspiring casters slash casters at different skill levels within their professional career, right? Like Mimi was already doing things with Riot for like VCT level challengers level things back when it was like the Challengers League leading into all the Masters events and everything like that over time. And then you also had Dryad. She had been doing Overwatch for a couple of years beforehand. And then so you had like a mix of slightly more seasoned, a little bit more experienced talent, and then there was like I was probably one of the ones with the least amount of experience because I did like I want to say like maybe five casts for in-houses, volunteer the year before, and that was all the experience that I was bringing to the table realistically. So it was a lot from the basics, and then they did teach us more about like storytelling and working with the production team, what it would be like at a higher level, like closer to the VCT level. But I was so green back then that I wasn't able to like fully absorb that information, I don't think, because I was still catching up to a lot of the basics that I didn't really grasp a lot of those intricacies. Like I understood obviously what they were talking about, but I didn't have the experience of like working on a product at that level before. So it was kind of all just like over my head in the sense of I don't have experience with this and I'm more of like a hands-on person as well. Um, but it was very nice how they were able to like cover all bases, whether it was like mechanics of casting, those skills, on camera skills. We had a vocal coach that came in to teach us like vocal warm-ups and everything like that as well. And also just like general chats to be able to talk to people who did different aspects of talent work, whether it was analyst work, caster work, host work, and just like generally learning more about the industry and hearing stories that are being shared to understand that not everyone's progress is also linear when it comes to this kind of work as well.
What story stood out to you the most in just hearing the experiences of other people, other much more experienced people that you still kind of look back on and think about?
Oh, um, whose experience? I think I might be biased because Vans is my friend and he also is my mentor. But I think I always remember his story because it's like the idea of he shot for his dream very early on when he was younger. And then he decided that he had to drop it and then go and like do something else for work. And then found this opportunity to come back into the esports world. And I think it's very admirable to see the fact that he was chasing this dream for so long, decided, okay, I have to do what's best for my personal life there, and then having the courage to try and come back and make what wasn't working out for him beforehand work out now in like a second iteration of him going to go chase his dream is something I really respect, like the decisions that he was able to make and the path that he was able to take in that, and the fact that he was willing to kind of just put everything on the line and go for it a second time, and be doing stuff like casting for VCT Americas now, actually like hitting that level. And I know that that's not where his goals stop, because eventually, he'd love to be on like the international stage and everything like that. But I really admire his journey and the fact that it really proves that there are a lot of up and downs, and sometimes you will have to make a sacrifice. But if the cards do line up, there is also that opportunity to kind of come back, and it's never too late to start chasing what you really dream for.
No, I was fortunate enough to talk to him and have him hear the story that he told you to me, and
Mm-hmm.
likewise, it really was very fascinating to hear. And yeah, shout out once again to Van Sidley for making it happen. Uh, just also one other thing that I want to touch upon. What was the application process like? Because up until now, I think that's the only that was like a one time thing, right? So what
Mm-hmm.
was the application? How did you even like relay your information over there?
It was a Google form. It was a Google form,
Mm,
baby. Like it
there you
was
go.
yeah, it was quite thorough. It was quite thorough. But it makes sense that it was a Google form. I think to just like make it as accessible and simple as possible and straightforward to send an application through. Um and I answered all the questions that I had. I can't even remember all of the questions that I had. I
Mm,
know that there was a section to post, like whether it was a reel or like a VOD of something that you had cast and everything like that. And when I first started, I was actually a play-by-play caster, and because I was like, I don't know enough about the game to color cast. Like nobody wants to hear me color cast. I was still learning at that point, and I became a color caster because of Vansili actually. When he was one of the people who was helping pick the applicants, and
mm,
he told me after we had met that the reason he chose to slot me into the color caster role was because in the VOD that I had sent, it was this like for fun community tournament that one of my friends did for her Twitch channel, and she wanted like the casters cameras up, so I'm watching the game, casting the game, but my face is also on the screen. And Vance is like, you just looked at the mini map all the time. So I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna put her in as a color caster because everyone kind of got typed. So there would be pairs since there were 6 people who had been selected. That way we could practice like in play-by-play color pairs while we were there. And yeah, it was an interesting process for sure.
so now you're still color cast. So is that the thing that you want to continue being in primarily, or is it more just being analyst test slash a host?
I think primarily I would love to continue to be a color caster within Valorant. But I would love to do both roles, to be honest. Like I really enjoy doing both color casting and the analyst desk. So I they're very different roles, and but I think that color casting is definitely my big passion when it comes to what I want to do for talent work, but I'm open for anything. And then I do mostly hosting in Overwatch and Rocket League as far as like other esports titles go.
Yeah, for sure. Now I gotta ask you about the other titles. Overwatch, Rocket League. When did this entire thing kind of start for you? Was it around the same time as Valor, or does it go much farther behind Valor?
This is after Valorant, because I would say Valorant, I mainly worked on only Valorant when I first started doing what I do. And then after I got a little bit more comfortable, I branched out into doing some hosting work as well. And I think actually the first Overwatch hosting gig that I did may have been the Overwatch World Cup last year. I Am I lying right now? It's either the Overwatch World Cup or I did the Calling All Heroes. but I mainly have done hosting for marginalized genders events within Rocket League and Overwatch. Um, and I haven't done too much as of late just because there hasn't been like as much going on slash like just not having a host for certain broadcasts and everything like that. But I really enjoy doing the hosting work in other titles. I don't know if I would necessarily get big into casting other titles though, as of now, just because I'm very Valorant focused as far as I think it's very important for me to level up to a certain skill level within my main game first before I look to branch out anymore.
Yeah, interesting difference between, you know, you working in Valorant and other titles, being able to be a host. And do you kind of would you also like to be a host like in other events in Valorant if the opportunity presents itself?
Yeah, I would love to host in Valorant if the opportunity presented itself. I have done hosting a couple of times in Valorant, but typically get hired more so for like color casting slash analyst work. I think it's difficult too because in our esport, there aren't that many events that actually hire hosts either. So the slots are a bit more limited on that, and it's not my main focus for this esport either. But I mean, I'd also be happy doing interviews for Valorant too. I always like, I don't know, I yap. I think you've learned that I yap too. I take a long time to answer some of your questions.
No,
So
that's
happy
what
to
I
always talk to people.
that's what I want to hear, man. The Yap City. That's exactly what I want my channel to be. You know, just having people yap all the time. And yeah, pretty interesting. Just learning about your way of interviewing, or that's the right way to say it. How do you do your interviews? Because as an interviewer, I am intrigued as to how you do it. So I kind of told you my way of
Ooh.
doing it. So how do you do it?
How do I do interviews? You're asking someone who's not that good at interviews yet. I'm still learning, but because I don't get too many opportunities to run interviews, and sometimes it's like I'm not like a solo interviewer and everything like that, but it depends on the game as well. If it's Valorant, like I'll ask like whatever question comes up in my mind. I tend to try and prep like a couple questions beforehand, and then if I want to pivot from those during the conversation because something comes up, then I'll do that. I think I try to keep it like pretty conversational just to because for me, at least the way that I want to try to, and maybe I'm not successfully doing it, but the way I try to approach interviews is making the interviewee as comfortable as possible. Like I don't want them to feel nervous. So I kind of try and break the ice, try and like just feel it out a little bit, and understand maybe like what questions would be more comfortable, less comfortable, like just try and feel a vibe because I feel like I tend to be, not to toot my own horn, pretty good at reading people. So I just try to get a bit of an understanding of that when I go into it. And then I'll also use that like in the future if it's someone I've interviewed previously and I'm interviewing them again. So yeah, I'll prep my questions beforehand, but I'm also not afraid to pivot from those questions during an interview if something else I think is more intriguing that comes up during our conversation. But I would say that's my general approach. I try to keep it a little bit more like loose and fun. I don't know.
No, no, I understand. Who was the best, or do you think was the best interview you've done with somebody? Who do you think that person is? You know, so far that in your career, who's the best interview that you've done?
The best interview that I've done? Oh my God, that's a really hard question. That's a really hard question. Hold on. Let me check.
There's a lot I would say because I've had my own myriad of interviewees, so just gotta
Yeah.
send that question over to you.
Okay, but when I tell you, you have to tell me yours afterwards.
Sure. And then after
Trying
that,
to think right now.
I'll
Yeah?
tell you. And after that, I'll ask you who your worst interviewee is, or who's
No, no
the worst.
comment. No comment.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I'm trying to think right now. I actually don't even know who was the best interview that I've ever done. feel like that's such because there's so many different ways that you can take that. There are also so many people that I've interviewed, and they're all like blending together in my head right now. But I want to say I did get to do, I'll go with, there's two here. Um, I don't think this is the best interview that I have done personally, but it was my first VCT interview, and that was I interviewed Tamazi during the BBL Foot match at one point this season, and that was a fun interview just because Tamazi is fun to interview, and it was a super last minute call, but I felt like I felt proud of my interview, at least for like the first one that I was doing like on that stage. And it was just like a generally fun one. And I think one of the best, most recent interviews that I did was with Benny on CGN. He was a great interviewee, and it was a lot of fun to talk to him on Ascension broadcast. He provided a lot of insight. Like he answered the questions in a way it was like great the way he was answering the questions, and it gave me something to like work off of. And Mitch as well. So that was a good one, I would say. I don't know if there's one that stands out as like my absolute best one of my career yet. I don't think I found that interview at that.
Yeah, Benny, the Phoenix one trick. Yeah, who's gonna forget
Mm-hmm.
about him? And I will. I mean, for me, it's kind of hard to answer because as we kind of already are aware of, I've done a lot of interviews in my
Mm-hmm.
career, especially this year. I've already done a few years before. I've done a few of them a few years before that.
Mm-hmm.
But still, if I have to, all right, do you want to ask me about like Valorant specifically or all time?
All time.
Damn. Ah, it's so
Unless
hard.
if answering Valorant specific is easier for you, go for that one.
Okay,
Because I
okay.
understand the struggle right now. Because I was thinking and I was like combing through all the games, and I was like, there's too many people. There have been a lot of really good interviews.
Yeah, because I've had a similar story for you in a sense, a similar story as you in the sense that I cover a lot of games. It's not just Valorant that I just cover, but
Hmm.
because certain things went the way it did, I'm kind of trapped in Valorant. I don't know if that's the right word, but still, for Valorant, I will have to say it's a mixture of Valen, Boaster, and maybe Tense. Those three, because Valen, he is one that is always down to have a conversation. Always
Hmm.
provides a lot of depth in his answers to each question that I ask him. I've been fortunate enough to talk to him many times this year, and so gotta send my love to him over that. And then Bolster, same thing, very in depth and not shy to explain his thought process or his mentality and stuff like that. And then for Tense, just because of the star power, is Tense. Who's gonna be able to talk to Tense? And I was fortunate enough to talk to him during Champions, this tournament. So I might have had the last interview with him as a player. Who knows? But yeah, those three. As for all time, I will say there's one guy that comes to my mind. I will say it is Seb. Seb, he is from Dota 2. He's a legend in the game. I'm not sure if you know anything about that. Dota 2. Do you know Dota 2? Yeah.
I'm so
Uh,
sorry.
think of Dota 2 as like League of Legends, but for grown-ups. It's much more
I I
complex.
know Dota 2. I just don't know the esport.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's all fine. It's all fine. Was able to talk to him about
Mm,
the state of the team. The team name was in his OG, and OG in layman terms is basically like Sentinels, but in Dota. The
okay.
most popular team. Everybody loves them. So yeah. And another one that comes to my mind is Kerrigan and Zaiwu for Counter
Okay.
Strike, because I was able to talk to both of them over in IEM Dallas. So yeah, those three. I was supposed to give like two for each or one for each, but there you go. That's my answer to you. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Those are some very cool people that you've interviewed.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, you're up there. You are definitely up there
Okay.
for my cast, okay? No, honest to God, okay? Honest to God. All right.
You don't have to gas me up like that. It's okay. It's okay.
No, I'm not gassing you up, okay? I'm being honest, okay? I'm looking you just right into the camera and just saying I'm not lying, okay? All right.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Now going a little bit ahead over into next year, and the one thing that I have to talk to you about is Masters Toronto, and Toronto's in Canada. You are from Canada. You know,
Yeah.
I can already get a sense from your smile. Like, do you want to be? Would you basically have to kill somebody to go to Masters Toronto? Is
Yes.
that like
Like
your priority?
if I don't get a ticket, you might see me on the news. I don't know. If I don't get a ticket, you might see me on the news. I am so excited because I know, like, one, Toronto fans are insane when it comes to Valorant. Like, the grassroots scene that's been built up here, the love for the game here, you know that the crowd is going to be crazy. Um, Two, I have a lot of friends, obviously in Canada because that's where I'm from, who would love to go to an international event for Valorant, and this is now like the most accessible one for them. So I'm very excited to like be able to share the esport and like attend something with my friends. And so it's just like it's a little bit of a dream. I didn't think that an event in Canada would happen. We don't even have an agent. We don't have a Canadian agent. Right? If you want me to voice your Canadian agent, just hit my line. But yeah, so maybe Canadian agent next year because they tend to fall in line usually with where the international events are going to be. But it is insane that is in Toronto. Like I'm just like I'm word salading so hard right now because I cannot contain my excitement of the fact that we are going to have an event here, and I think it's going to be incredible. And I can't wait to also have like hopefully some of my talent friends get to come here and work the event as well, and the opportunity for like I know like Yeti is from like the not necessarily the GTA, but like kind of like this general area as well. So like the opportunity to like get in touch with Nick and for us to be able to like show our friends around who are visiting from out of the country is all very exciting and everything like that, depending on who ends up getting picked up for that international.
Would you just be satisfied just being there in person in general, or would it also mean more to you if you were able to get that call up to work as a talent?
I think getting the call up to work as a talent would be a dream come true to work that like in the city that I grew up in as well. Um, But at the same time, I'm realistic. I'm a realistic girly. I am not gonna shoot too high. I obviously have dreams that I aspire to reach, but this was just my first year doing VCT on trial. And going into next year, I still don't really know what's going to be going on for me or what's in the cards. So I don't want to shoot too high, and I definitely don't have an expectation to work the event. If I got the call up, I don't know. I might be locked into a padded room for like a week or something like that because I would be losing my mind and I would think I was going crazy if I got that opportunity. But it's it would definitely be a dream. But I would be more than happy to just also get to enjoy it as a spectator because I've never been to an international event for VCT. I've always just watched a stream from home. So even just the chance to go into the crowd and experience it in that way, I think is like a privilege that I'm hoping I get to experience.
Yeah, because I was almost, well, I was also in your boat in the sense that I've not really been into an international Valorant event except for Champs 2023 because I was able to go to Los Angeles, visit the forum, be on the ground, and just having to watch everything unfold. It was
Hmm.
pretty. From my experience, it was definitely a sight to behold, and hopefully, once that when that time comes, would eventually you'll eventually get to experience that also. And who knows? Maybe I'll go to Canada as well. Maybe I'll hop my way over there, eat some Canadian pancakes, eat some Canadian honey or something. I don't know if that's the actual, customary food, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
Maple syrup and poutine. Maple syrup and poutine.
Poutine.
Do you know what
What's that?
poutine is?
No.
Poutine is, it's like, okay, do you know what chili cheese fries are? No? Okay, that's it. Okay. Poutine is like, I only ask because like that's usually the comparison between I think the American versus like Canadian, but poutine is French fries with gravy and cheese curds.
Cheese curds.
Hmm.
How's it? Wait, I have the computer right. I'll just look it up right myself.
Yeah, you can look it up
Wait,
right
hold
now.
on. Oh, cheese curds. They actually look pretty delicious. Wait, hold on. Let
They
me just.
are
Wait, hold on.
a little bit melted, a little bit chewy. That's the good stuff right there.
Okay, it kind of looks like fries with like slicings of potatoes on top of it, or with gravy. I think that's what it looks to me as well. Maybe.
It's just French fries. I don't know what kind of poutine you just looked up, but
No, it's just kind of what I'm seeing through the Google search results.
hmm
I see like these little patches of like white stuff, which you say is cheese curds,
hmm
and in my eyes, from my experience, is like slicing small slicings of potatoes because that's what my mom usually does whenever she
Mm.
does cooking. So she makes that kind of stuff, gives it to me, I eat, and yeah, good stuff. And yeah, interesting way to put it. Poutine and maple
Maple
syrup.
syrup.
Do they go together?
No,
Okay. Well, we'll
not
just.
traditionally. Technically, I guess if you had maple bacon on top of your poutine, that works. But I personally recommend just going with a classic original poutine the first time that you try it.
Okay. Well, what about other foods that you kind of want the entire viewership to look at?
It's a lot of pressure.
Hmm.
I mean, I think the Asian food scene in Toronto is really good, like really good. I really missed the food here. And uh I don't know, because I think like a big part of like Toronto specifically is the fact that there's so much diversity in cuisine and in cultures. And it's like it's actually good food and not just, you know, okay. Um, but as far as like Canadian things, I feel like there really aren't that many Canadian specific things. Do you drink at all?
No, no, I don't drink.
No.
No, I don't drink.
I don't really either. I don't really either.
Mm.
I was gonna say there's like a difference between like the tomato juice cocktail? We make a different kind here. No, you don't know. That's okay.
That's just
Um,
like so. That sounds sophistry to me. Like sophistry, absolute sophistry.
that's okay. That's okay. Uh, I would feel like I think snacks are probably the bigger thing, especially for Americans. We have like different snacks that you can't necessarily find outside of Canada, like ketchup chips.
Mm.
I'm not really ketchup chips are okay, but we have ketchup chips and different like candy bars and everything like that. But as far as like food, I think that's probably the main one, the poutine. But
Okay.
Toronto poutine is also not Toronto's not where you want to get poutine. You got to go to Montreal.
Okay, well, Valorant, well, Riot should just hold an event over in Montreal, but too little, too
Do a
late.
second
So
one.
do a second one. Maybe like we'll hold another like impromptu Masters event with like gold level players and just stamp a plastic flag over their chest and just say, oh, hey, they're from Korea or something like that. We'll just try to figure it out, and then we can have like the Montreal kind of food over there. So yeah, elaborate plan, but hopefully it'll happen in due time. So uh, going a little bit of another topic that I want to touch upon in addition to that, it's one thing that I should have kind of touched upon at the very jump of this conversation. Just sort of um, going back into EMEA, VCT EMEA. How did that even start in the first place? Because I didn't even ask you about that first of all.
Um, how did like getting the opportunities start?
Yeah, getting contacted, all that stuff.
I think part of it was the fact that I was working in the EMEA region last year, just within the Game Changers circuit. So I had eyes on me from last year, and I think that they saw the work that I put in doing the Game Changers broadcast, and I assume that that is why I got brought up to like that next level there. Um, Otherwise, I feel like that's all I can really say. But I don't. There isn't really too much more that's interesting to the story on that one.
Oh, but for real, like, just getting scouted, to represent EMEA, from Canada, because I mean, it's a long way to go from that to here, and then having to do so over, other people. Oh, sorry about that. And as I kind of mentioned, standing out. I would say that's an interesting story, but the same can be
That's
said,
fair.
you know?
I definitely agree. I think that I was very surprised that I got the call up to EMEA, especially considering the fact that I'm from outside of the region. I think that in hindsight, it does make sense because I was working with one of their products closely with a lot of love as well over the course of 2023. But otherwise, I mean, though the fact that I was selected, I think is very interesting. Realistically, like the journey for it was pretty straightforward as far as I think I was just like very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time and was able to show my stuff in those moments as well and have somebody recognize that.
Just to kind of rewind, it was just you were going about your day, you got a message saying, okay, here, hey, uh, we're selecting you to work VCT EMEA this year. Is that it? Like,
Yeah, so originally I think Pavlos and I were looking to try out our duo and everything like that, right? But we weren't sure what level we would be able to take that at or anything like that. So I kind of reached out to our talent manager just to say, hey, we're considering, working together just as a heads up in case there's any opportunities for us to work together on game changers this year or anything like that. And I really didn't expect the callback to be like, okay, yeah, game changers, but also VCT EMEA. And that wasn't told to me right off the gate. Like when I sent that message, it was just when I actually got the call up to get my contract sorted for 2024. That is when I found out that they wanted me for the VCT EMEA product there as well. And it was a very big shock, to be honest. I wasn't expecting that. I really thought that it was just going to be, um, getting renewed for Game Changers this year and continuing to like kind of grind up in that kind of sense. But it's a very pleasant surprise.
from point A of the initial contact to point B, everything became official. Exactly how long did that take? Was it like a week, 2 weeks?
I honestly can't remember off the top of my head right now because it was a bit of a process. Because there was a lot going on, I think, within the Riot ecosystem at that time. So I actually can't even pinpoint the exact timeline of that. I feel like ever since I started working in esports, time is a blur in general.
No, yeah, I understand that either because I still remember having to do the pre-kickoff of interviews for VCT Americas to start the season, and it sort
Mhm.
of still feels like that was yesterday, and that was done like in January of 2024. Now we're in September, heading into October. So, I mean, it shows you how fast time is and how terrifying it is. Also, not to be very doom and gloom, but still, it is what it is like that.
Mhm. It definitely is. It's like such a big adjustment, I think, to like get used to an esports schedule, which at the end of the day, other than, having broadcasts is you don't have a schedule. And I think that's the hardest adjustment to like have to like build that out yourself and like set those boundaries and those timelines for yourself, for your goals and everything like that too.
Yeah, and you said that this whole thing started in late 2021, early 2022, you making this a full-time thing. What exactly did you do before, you made the jump and decided to take this uh avenue from your prior avenues?
Um, so Okay, to start things off, what I was doing beforehand was I was finishing up nursing school, actually. So I graduated from nursing school and it was time for me to start like studying for my licensing exam and everything like that. And this was all in the middle of COVID. I have asthma, and I was like, okay, maybe I don't enter the workforce right away and I take a little bit of a break and take some time to do my studies for my certification. And during that time that I was taking that break, everything kind of popped up when it came to Valorant and doing broadcasts and the opportunity to go to the training camp. And I kind of decided, okay, I can go back and finish my certification later if I really want to. When it comes to an opportunity like this, if you don't seize it in that moment, it could just slip by and you might not have the opportunity to come back ever. So you might one day, but you also don't know. And it was really the first time I ever took a jump like that, I want to say. I kind of just dove in head first and thought, hey, this is kind of a dream job for me, a dream job that I didn't even realize was an option to have as a dream job. And I felt like it would be a mistake not to put my best foot forward into this opportunity and just to give it a shot, knowing that I can fall back on nursing if I really want to in the future. Now I'm at a point where I don't think I will personally fall back to nursing. If this doesn't pan out, I think I'll go into a different direction. But it's a very big pivot because I was doing healthcare beforehand and I had my nursing diploma and then I had half of a health sciences degree also almost finished. And I decided not to finish it because casting was taking up too much of my time and I didn't have the time to go and I ensure that I was doing my best in my studies anymore. So I had to pick between one of the two, and I chose following this dream for now.
Yeah, and definitely, it was a gamble, at the start, and so far, it's been kind of playing itself out. Uh, Out of curiosity, when you took that decision, I mean, did you kind of relate to anybody like your parents and stuff like that? What was their reaction, or was there people out other than your parents that are kind of looking after you, and then you kind of saw as parent figures?
Um, hmm. So before I moved home recently, the last 8 years before that, I was living on my own slash with my at the time partner. Um, like straight out of high school, basically, I moved out and was supporting myself and everything like that. And I think my parents were quite strict when I was growing up, to be candid. Um, but as I grew older and they saw the path that I was taking and everything like that, I think I've always been a very independent person. And as a kid, I was super independent and confident and just doing my own thing. And I think that as I became an adult, that made it a lot easier for my parents to kind of just trust the process when it came to me. Um, they were definitely a little, I don't even want to, they were hesitant at first, especially when it came to the Game Changers training camp. My mom was like, "Are you sure you're not getting scammed right now?" And I was like, "Mom, no. This is actual Riot Games is hosting this. I'm not about to like go to LA and be stranded." Um, so there's a hesitancy in that, but I think over time they saw the fruits of my labor paying off. There's the fact that I was able to support myself doing this. And I did have like some support from my ex, like very early on in that portion of my career. And then, yeah, they didn't really have like too much to say, I don't think, about my situation because they just decided to be a little bit more understanding because they did push me a lot when I was a kid to kind of like be the best version of myself and to go in specific career paths.
Like a
Um,
typical Asian parents, I would say, maybe like
yeah,
that. Okay.
I would say like my parents are pretty compared to like very, very traditional Asian parents, they're not as traditional per se, but they are as strict.
Mhm,
So when it came to career stuff, it was like you're only allowed to be like a doctor, a lawyer, a chartered accountant,
mhm,
a dentist, bada
mhm.
bing, bada boom. And I was initially on the doctor route, and then I was like, I don't want to go to med school. I don't want to do this. This is not my thing personally, as much as I do love science. University did kill my love of science just because of the way it's taught, I guess. Um, and so that's why I made the switch to nursing because I was like, oh, I actually like also being able to interact with people a little bit more and being a bit more hands-on with my patients as opposed to just only, getting like 10 minutes with them or being more busy with like charting and other things and paperwork. Um, so a very different approach to what I realized I wanted to do. And then it was kind of just, okay, now I just interact with people all the time because I talk for a living. So yeah.
Yeah, did you kind of, well, another aspect that I want to also touch upon was just kind of when did you start following esports? Because in taking this path and having that, go parallel with your uh, old route, which is, studying nursing, studying, in medicine, those eventually they had to intersect and you basically had to decide which of the other. Obviously you went for esports. When did that whole kind of thing start for you, being a fan and just having to first pay attention to the scene?
For Valorant, I would say 2021, like mid to late 2021 is when that really happened for me. When it comes to esports in general, I actually my first competitive game was Smite. So I watched a lot of Smite at one point in my life, very early on. I never really got like into the community because I didn't really use like socials all that much. I really just watched like the broadcasts for it. And then I would say like my first time really engaging with the community was probably like 2021-ish around that time. And just like starting to interact more with the fan base and even like watching from a distance as well, like not necessarily interacting, but just seeing what was coming up, what people like to discuss and everything like that. That was when that kind of happened to me. And that was also like the transition period of when I phased out of, okay, I just graduated from nursing. Now what do I want to like do? Okay, I'm really interested in this esport in Valorant, and I've been doing like some of the casting stuff. And then the training camp is like the real catalyst, I think, to what totally flipped the switch for me.
I didn't expect for you to say Smite, maybe League of Legends, but Smite? Of all the games you could have looked at, Smite?
I know.
Like,
All of my friends played Smite in high school, so
okay,
we
that's
all
fair
just
enough.
played Smite together, and they watched it, and I got into it. So that was the gateway drug for me when it comes to esports.
That's something that is a story I've not really heard of. Smite being the entrance
You want to know
of
something?
one's. Oh,
You want to know? I'll one up it. I'll one up it
all right,
right
go
now.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Not an entry into esports, but I use my Smite keybinds for Valorant.
Oof, there
Yeah.
you go. Well, there you go. Well, there's some good into that, I would say.
Is
On
there? Is I don't think people would necessarily agree with that. One, two, three, four is a little questionable.
But like you went from Smite, a game that not as popular, compared to the other games at the time, and even I would say now, and then going that from Valorant, then that led to
Mhm.
you starting out working in Valorant, then that led to you building your stuff, and now here we are, in which you are sitting here talking to me, a random Valorant interviewer. So just jokes, but yeah, of course, of course. Uh, going a little back onto the parents topic, what can you kind of pinpoint the exact time in which your parents started to go from, okay, we don't want Ash to keep doing this, or to, okay, now we're starting to make sense, which exact time or point in time did that transition happen for you?
For casting,
In general, like just your work,
for my work in general, I think I had a really, really bad experience in my first year of university. And like I had a really, really rough year transitioning from moving out and being in a new city by myself and my mental well-being with my classes because I was taking 6 courses a semester at that point. And I want to say on average, most people probably take like 4, maybe 5, depending on the program, if you can fit the 5th one in. But people most comfortably, I want to say, take 4 in Canada on average. And I was taking 6 at that time. So I had a really difficult time like transitioning at that point, and I think my parents saw like how that is affecting me, and I kind of realized then I was like, I actually don't think I want to keep doing health sciences and go through like this whole health sci to try to apply to med school pipeline because I'm not really happy with the work that I'm doing. And when I had that conversation with them, they actually thought I was calling them to say that I wanted to swap to art school because I was really big into visual arts when I was younger. And there was a point where I did want to go to school for arts because I was much more passionate about the creative side of things. And I did love science as well, but um, my heart definitely lied with the creativity aspect of myself. And I think it was ever since that moment going forward, they kind of just let me kind of do whatever I wanted without judging me too much because they saw the difference that it made and how happy I was with what I was doing and what to be able to like pursue something because I wanted to be pursuing it as opposed to feeling like this is what I'm supposed to be pursuing because of external factors. Um, that was the big one. And then, so when it came down to like casting and everything like that later down the line, they didn't really have anything to say about it.
Must have been a massive like weight off your shoulders once you got that confirmation, right? In which you can basically do what you want, right?
Yes, yes and no. It was a little bit of a weight off my shoulders, but I think that I've always marched to the beat of my own drum. So,
Mhm.
although I respect my parents greatly and I appreciate everything that they've done for me, um, I also got to a point in my adulthood pretty early on of just like this understanding of, okay, I'm doing things to make myself happy and to live the kind of life that I want to live. And I never really felt too much pressure to be living for the sake of somebody else and their expectations, like pretty early on when I was growing up.
So you're basically the encapsulation of the strong, independent woman that just want whatever they want to do, right?
I hope so. In a way, yeah, I think so. I don't necessarily like think about it in that way. I kind of just I think about it in the sense of just like just being generally independent. And that's just kind of how I've always been. Um, but yeah, I would say that I've always kind of just wanted to do what I want to do, and if that makes me happy, it makes me happy. And if something doesn't make me happy, I typically don't want to do it anymore. And I won't, it depends on what it is. There are some things where it's good to force yourself to do those things, but there's other things where you're like, girl, you're suffering for no reason right now, and it's
Hmm.
okay to let go.
Hmm. Hmm. So kind of like instances where you kind of overthink too much and just kind of do so over things that in reality just kind of doesn't mean that much, just kind of you having to overcome your overthinking. I'm not sure if I kind of explained it in the right way, but you know.
Understanding what you're trying to say, like the idea of, being aware of what you want to do, but not second guessing yourself on it, or just kind of being more grounded and in tune with what you truly want at heart, as opposed to kind of, I think sometimes a lot of external voices can, over time and over repetitive instances, can start to hear like sound like it's your own voice saying something when it isn't. And just being able to like recognize the truth of being honest to yourself and knowing what's actually going to make you happy in those moments instead of just like assuming that you'll be happy because you're making somebody else happier. That's what you've been told is going to make you happy.
Yeah, I think so, of that nature, and it's a mentality that's been refined, worked on throughout your entire career. As that, going into the tail end of this conversation, I got a few more questions left to ask you. Well, there is an interesting point that Bran told me when I talked to him back in the America studio during Stage Two playoffs, and the thought of just what he perceives as goals, and to him his goal is just focus on his own self improvement, and instead of not really focusing on the the external goals as a reaching a certain milestone or casting a certain event, being in the grand finals of champions, because not many people can do that. So in a sense, broadcast talent look at
Mhm.
that as a goal. That said, my question to you is this: what do you kind of look at as your goal, for ultimate goal, not just focusing from now until next year, just sort of in an overall sense?
An ultimate goal. Oh, I think because from what you've said about what Bren was telling you at that time, I tend to approach the idea of goals with a very similar mindset. So I don't really look at I don't really look at goals as, oh, my goal is to one day do this event or one day hit this level. Um, because I think that sometimes you can get a little bit lost if you hyperfixate on those goals. They're not bad goals to have, by all means. This is also not shade to anyone who has a goal of like, I want to do this, I want to do that. Like, yeah, work towards that. Like that would be incredible. Um, but I try to stick more with the mindset of, okay, what do I want to improve on? How do I want to sound? And what would make me happy as far as the things that I might actually able to contribute and to control myself. Because I can't control whether I'm going to get selected for a broadcast or not. I could improve like from 0 to 100 within 1 year and I could still not be selected for that broadcast. It's okay to have a goal like, do I want to work champions for VCT one day? Hell yeah, of course I do. But that's not what I have my eyes on. That's not where I'm drawn as far as my focus goes. Um, my goal is more so to be happy with the product that I'm putting out on a consistent basis. I think my goal is more so consistency in my work at a high quality level, as opposed to having my eyes on a product that I want to be a part of. Um, yeah, I would say that that's like the main thing for me is I want to be able to feel like consistently like I am happy, I'm content, or at minimum satisfied with the work that I did today. Because to be honest, I think I walked away from most of the broadcasts that I did this year during EMEA. And while I know I grew, I walked away hungry to do better, as opposed to being like, this is just a good day and like, I'm cool with this. It was always like, oh, I could do this better. I need to do this better. And if I can hit, one day of being like, hey, I'm happy with the work that I put out there, good stuff. And, there might be little things that I need to improve, but if I'm generally overall satisfied, I think that's the main goal that I'm looking towards and being able to put out that level of work consistently. Um, that's my biggest goal, I think, for my career.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely one that I feel many people should kind of look at and take it upon for their goals. Not copy and pasting it 100%, but still just use that as inspiration for, the things that they want to do later on down the line. With that said, I believe that about wraps up my all of my questions for this conversation. Ash, thank you so much. Oh, there's one more question. I just forgot to ask this. A little bit of a short one, a sweet and concise one. You've been posting a lot of Pokemon on your social media, specifically Twitter. Got to give you the
Yeah.
ultimate final question. What's your favorite Pokemon?
I have to pick one.
Yes, just one.
If I just have to pick one, it's Munchlax.
Munchlax?
Yeah, that's my
Okay,
one favorite Pokemon.
why Munchlax?
Why not Munchlax? He's just a little guy who likes to eat. He's just like me for real.
He loves to...
Um, yes?
No, 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 you go ahead.
Oh no, I was just that's all I really had to say about him. I love him as a Pokemon. He's super cute. He's like a little gremlin energy, but also like a little sweetheart in the show too. Can't go wrong. But like I like a lot of the goofy little guys, like Psyduck is another like top Psyduck is top 3 for me for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to counter that, like, your Munchlax argument with Snorlax, because for me, like, Snorlax is up there as, like, one of my favorite Pokemon, because I grew
Mm-hmm.
up watching Pokemon as a kid. And so Snorlax, it's got to be number one for me, around number one. And also, it kind of gives me the idea that you kind of look at only, like, Gen 1, 2, or 3 Pokemon as well, Like, like that, right? You mostly focus on Gen 1, 2, or 3?
Mm, I go up to like Gen 4.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I go up to Gen 4. Yeah,
Yeah,
Sinnoh was my favorite growing up.
I played the Pokemon Silver Game Boy game, so it's
Hmm.
like Johto, like Gen 2. That was like probably one of the games that I grew up playing, and I will say also Cyndaquil is like my go-to, or Typhlosion. I'm not sure which one to go to, Cyndaquil or Typhlosion. So those are my big dogs. So
Those are all
yeah.
solid picks.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Most definitely better than your Munchlax in a fight. That's it. I'm gonna wrap it up right here.
Oh, okay. I'm not
I'm
picked for
gonna.
fighting power, okay?
All right. All love, all love, all love for sure. Ash, thank you so much for taking the time during this quick conversation. Well, quick conversation, but we kind of passed almost 2 hours. Still,
Yeah.
quick conversation, nonetheless. So that's it. Thank you so much once again. Do you got any final words to share to anyone in the world?
Fine. That's a lot of pressure. I've never been on the receiving end of someone asking that question, but thank you, Pedro, for having me here today. It was really nice to be able to chat with you and share a little bit of my story. So I appreciate you reaching out to me. And um, I don't know, big thank you to everyone who has supported me throughout this entire time. Um, and I don't know, I've shouted out Vance so much during this, but big shout out to Vance for being a goated mentor and also to Gompers and Sarah for being great friends.
For sure, for sure, for sure. Ash, thank you so much.